Hi everybody, this is James Belsey and I'm going to be talking to you for the next couple of minutes about my PhD research, which I started back in 2016 and finished at the end of last year. And it involved a strong collaboration between HHFT, or more specifically Basingstoke Hospital, and the University of Winchester. I'm a sports scientist and I was embedded within a knee research team at Basingstoke to look primarily at returning to physical activity after high tibial osteotomy. To be more specific, my involvement in the collaboration between HHFT and the university, well, as I mentioned, I got my PhD from the university at the end of last year, looking at returning to physical activity after high tibial osteotomy with and without graft materials. I currently hold and have held since 2016 an honorary contract as a clinical researcher in the knee research team at Basingstoke Hospital. I've presented a number of poster and podium presentations at both national and international conferences representing the work that I've done as a result of this collaboration between the university and Hampshire hospitals. And so far, I have published 3 papers from my PhD studies that have been directly involving HHFT and the university, and I have up to 5 more that are currently in preparation to submit for publication as well. In addition to those, I have one ongoing study at Basingstoke that has been put on hold at the moment due to COVID-19, but I'm hoping to start up again rather soon, which is following on or continuing on from my PhD and tracking that physical activity levels after high tibial osteotomy. Just so we're all on the same page about what HTO is, high tibial osteotomy, I just wanted to briefly give a quick overview of that. So this is a type of surgery that is performed to realign the knee joint or the leg, especially for people who have bow legs, varus deformity, or knock knees, valgus deformity, meaning that the weight-bearing line, the amount of weight they put through their knee is going significantly through one side or the other, as you can see demonstrated in the pictures in front of you. This can be caused by a number of things, including deformations of the bones, which can be either congenital or as a result of injury, and most commonly it's as a result of degenerative osteoarthritis. So the soft tissues within the knee or within one side of the knee have been wearing away due to overuse or again due to that deformity, causing the weight-bearing line to shift ever more over to one side of the knee, increasing pain levels for the patient. So the surgery itself realigns the joint. You can see in the x-rays there, a plate and screws will be attached. And in the zoom in box on the very right hand side there, you can see that the bone has a little gap. A saw has gone in and opened a wedge that shifts that weight-bearing line. And again, you can see in those long leg x-rays how the pre-op and post-op weight-bearing lines are completely different. The pre-op on the left of the x-rays there showing the weight-bearing line going very much through the medial side of the knee, and after the operation, having opened that wedge within the tibia, the weight-bearing line is now much more central, if not slightly over to the lateral side. Now, to look specifically at the research I did with HHFT and the University of Winchester, I started my PhD and the thesis began with a systematic review of the literature, which has been published. I'm going to leave references at the end of the presentation here. This was looking at physical activity after both high tibial osteotomy and also partial knee replacements. That's unicompartmental knee arthroplasty, because traditionally physically active patients would be indicated more for the osteotomy over the arthroplasty. However, there have been more and more cases of research being published where arthroplasty patients have been doing quite well after with physical activity after surgery, and so I wanted to make sure that osteotomy still remained the preferential option for active patients, which indeed it does. And as I said, we've published that, and you can read about that through the references I'll show you at the end. I then moved on to look at the ways in which osteotomy can be performed, and specifically the use of bone grafts. So I showed you in the x-rays that opening wedge that can be left open and the plate holds it open until the bone heals, or you can insert a bone graft to increase the strength and stability, or at least that's what I was hypothesizing going into that study. We took a load of artificial bones, grouped them according to whether they had an osteotomy with or without a graft performed on them, and we crushed them until they broke to see which one withstood the most force. And unsurprisingly, the graft groups, both the bone graft and synthetic graft groups, did withstand far more force than the no graft group. So we could move on from that and infer that the use of some kind of graft material was beneficial in terms of exerting higher forces through the knee, which could be related to physical activity with regards to getting up and walking, going up and down stairs, activities of daily living in the early post-operative period, going into more recreational sporting activities as we get further into that recovery period. I then moved into the clinical side of things and started to embed myself more and more at Basingstoke with the patients there, and have been running both an accelerometer study where we've been attaching step counters to patients' legs, both those who are undergoing surgery with and without the graft, to move it from the biomechanical side into the clinical side of things, to see how patients actually get on. That study is ongoing. As I mentioned at the start, that's the one that's been delayed by COVID. I also did a questionnaire study to measure the same thing, and we found that those patients who had a bone graft were returning or had a higher pre to post-operative increase in their physical activity levels than those who had underwent surgery without a graft. I also tracked patients' physical activity and pain levels within the first 12 months post-operatively, just to ensure that the operation was a success. And we found again that there was a pain reduced 12 months after surgery relative to pre-op and the first couple of days post-operatively, and physical activity gradually increased. We found that 3-month period post-operatively was a key part where pain and physical activity kind of intersected and met on the way down and up. The final main study, clinical study that I performed, was in the biomechanics labs at the university, where we brought patients in to assess their gait while jogging and walking, and getting them to report any pain they might have experienced. And this was done years after their surgeries had been performed and their plates had been removed. We found we also compared those patients to healthy controls who'd never undergone any form of surgery, and we found that there were no differences both in the gait of the patients relative to the control group, and also no significant difference in pain relative to the control group as well. It was slightly higher, but it wasn't statistically significant. And finally, I also approached both patients and surgeons in 2 separate interview studies to try and find some of the other less tangible factors that might have had an influence on a patient's recovery and their physical activity levels post-surgery. So that's, in a nutshell, a brief overview of my PhD and the collaborative research I've been involved with HHFT and the University of Winchester. On the screen are 3 kind of relevant references that were really involved with that collaboration. So the top one is that systematic review I mentioned. The second one is my PhD thesis, the whole thesis. At the moment, following that link, we'll just give you the abstract. It's under an embargo for a couple of years while I still publish the remaining studies from that thesis. And the bottom reference there is a published abstract from a poster presentation that was presented at an international conference that took place in Glasgow in 2018. Thank you all for listening, and enjoy the rest of this conference.